never actually thought that by the time I got into my 30s, I'd be sniffing cocaine. Never envisaged when I was smoking weed at 17 that I would ever be in my 30s sniffing cocaine, because I was in a great world financially. You know, I could afford it. It wasn't like I had to go and rob or steal. I had a great job. And the one thing I remember as I progressed was, that'll never happen to me. That I'm too strong. You know, I'm just doing it for a bit of fun now and again. But I never thought the progression would take me all the way to a point where by the time I got to 37 or 35, I was fully blown addicted to crack cocaine. I had a house which was worth, you know, a lot of money. I lived next door to footballers in a very prestigious part of Nottingham. 2 children, a wife, and I lost all of that within 2 years of that particular drug, to the point that I ended up with nothing and I had to be in rehab. I went through the process of growing my addiction but wasn't aware of it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show, Shifting Your Mindset with Mutsa. We are live here on Diplomatic Radio. It's a Saturday afternoon. If you've just joined the show for the first time, this is a show where it's nothing but positivity. Nothing but positivity. We aspire to inspire, empower, and heal. We bring in real life experiences, and then from those experiences, we then get some inspiration, some positivity. We need more light in the world right now. We need more light. We need more love. You know, I always believe that the greatest gift we have as humanity is love. So on our show, we are just pushing for love and, you know, having conversations with inspirational people so that they can motivate us, you know, to be able to navigate through life. Is right here. I have my guest today who I'm super excited to have a conversation with. So, hi, Roger. How are you?
Woodsa, I'm fine, thank you very much. Really grateful to be on the show.
I'm grateful that you're actually on the show. I've been waiting for this show for a very long time. So thank you so much. Do you want to just introduce yourself so that the guests can get to know you? And then
sure.
A bit of background as well, where you were born, where you're from, and then we take it from there.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Hi, my name is Roger Henry. I'm the Chief Executive currently of Real Talk TV in Nottingham. I was born in Nottingham, but travelled to Birmingham as well. My grandparents raised me, so my mother could have an opportunity to kind of develop her own life because she had me when she was very young. So grandparents who are the saviours, even to this day, they raised me in Nottingham. And so I've lived in both cities really, but I would class myself as a person coming from Nottingham. I was brought up in an area called St Anne's, which in the day was very diverse, very similar to now. But I've got to say over the years things have changed, which I'll touch on later. But yeah, my journey's been an amazing one. It's not been easy. It's had its real difficult times, which I'll go into later. However, you know, my life right now, you know, thanks to God, and I have to say that very openly, that without His divine intervention, I wouldn't be here today.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen. There is so much you've just mentioned. So you were raised with your grandparents, which is typical because obviously I'm from Africa and we have quite a lot of those scenarios where we are raised by our grandparents. Mm-hmm. What was it like? Do you feel it was good, bad, advantage, or was it normal?
I look back at it now and I can see that there was areas where, maybe social services would have been involved, because obviously now in the UK, parents can't sort of hit their children and stuff like that. It's if it was down to me, there's a part of me that thinks it's not a bad thing to bring it back, but obviously the law is the law. So I would class my upbringing as very, very strict. Both my grandparents were very much kind of traditional. So they were born, my grandfather was born in 1919. And
1919?
Yeah, 1919. And my grandmother was born in 1920. So when you think in terms of my mother, who was born in the 40s, there's a big change, because I think the mindset of the older generation, you've got to imagine their parents were born in 18 something. So when you go back that far, that conditioning of how they were raised, then they enforced it on me. So children were children. You were to be seen and not heard. You had your duties of cleaning and all that kind of thing to do before even considering going to play out. And it was very much like that. Church was a very, very big part of my upbringing. I used to go to church twice on a Sunday. The Bible was something that I had at the side of my bed. And, it was very much fire and brimstone, I've got to say. If you don't do this, God is watching you. And, all very, 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 very Christian, very old school, traditional Christianity was forced on me. And when I look back now, those values that they were trying their best to instill into me, in their way, I became rebellious, which took me on to another journey. So I guess what I'm saying is that I had a real disciplined childhood, but those things that I learned then, which I wasn't happy with, are the very things that are carrying me through today.
Right.
I just didn't see, I couldn't see the benefit when I was younger, as most kids wouldn't.
Absolutely. And that, I think that resonates with a lot of us, because every generation is different, right?
Yeah.
And we always up the game. But then there are elements of what you're saying, being strict and all of that. I mean, I don't know how many generations later, and I have boys and I'm very strict with them. so that resonates with me. So you mentioned that you rebelled, and then obviously you diverted. Would you care to explain what that means? What happened at that stage in your life?
I think so. What happened was I just stopped. All my friends who were brought up by their parents, who were born in the 40s, 50s, they were more trendier, more modern. I was still wearing big flares. When flares died in the late 70s, flares, trousers, the fashion, all of that stuff. When you're a child and you're still wearing this, I mean, even to this day, kids in school, if you've got boys, they are very fashion conscious, because if they're wearing cheap trainers, then, it would be like, yeah, they'd be seen as less than and can't afford it and all. And young people, they don't mince the words. They just say it as it is. They don't think about consideration. So I was probably at school a typical, in this current time, the Primark kid, because I didn't have much money. My grandparents didn't have a great deal of money. And what they did have, they looked after. So they were very, very sensible. But my fashion, or their outlook on fashion, was one of the biggest things that I kind of picked up on, which made me feel less than and quite inadequate at school, where all my friends were wearing tight trousers, modern trainers. And I think from an early stage, I always felt very different in comparison to my friends, because none of them were being raised by their grandparents. They were being raised by their parents. At the time, my mother met my stepfather, and they had children, so they were my half brothers and sister, and it was it's almost like they were getting the fun out of life, where I was in this very disciplined, going to church. I had to wear a suit to go to church, where they didn't go to church. They didn't have to keep eating traditional food. I was eating traditional food every day, and when I went to my friends' houses where they were having chips and all this kind of English food, I really missed it. And there was a big difference when I used to go home to my mother's to see my brothers and sisters. Then they would be eating this modern food and having a very modern way of living. And I guess that's where my rebellion came in. I didn't want to be different, and I fought against it. When it came to going to church on a Sunday, especially the second time, because I used to go to church twice, they couldn't find me. I would disappear. So I knew my grandmother and my grandfather was going to go to church, but I'd purposely stay away so they couldn't get me. There was no mobile phones or social media or anything. And I would know there was going to be consequences of when they came back from church, because I didn't go to church, even though they told me to be ready. But so strong was the rebellion of not wanting to go to church that I would rather hide so they couldn't find me.
So when you talk about rebellion, because I think there's a shift in there, especially for the young people, you know, and I know you're very passionate about young people, and we'll move on to some of the work that you've done around young people. When you talk about the rebellion, if you were to write a letter to the younger you, that rebellion, how would you tackle that situation where you are in an environment, and obviously as a young person it's not aligning to what you want, so you rebel to try and send a message? How would you revert that or shift the mindset?
The problem you've got with that, I think adolescence and part of maturity is to learn and go through these mistakes. I call it a mistake because, you know, my grandmother, a favorite saying, you know, was, if you can't hear, you must feel. And she used to repeat that to me a lot, you know. She wasn't aggressive, but she used to say to me, if you can't hear, you must feel. And when I look back now, that one sentence probably meant more to me to this day than ever, because I never listened.
Yeah.
You know, part of being rebellious is that you don't want to listen. You think you know what's best. And I think looking back at it now, my grandparents, who were born in 1919 and 1920, they've had a lived experience. They would have went through exactly the same as me. So me as a 13, 14-year-old, where would I actually think in terms of that I know what's best? I was born the other day, but yet I'm making these big decisions in my life. So to my younger self, I would have said something like, you know, you need to learn to take the cotton wool out of your ears and put it in your mouth. Right. And what I mean by that is learn from the adults. Don't think that they've always been adults. They've had experiences that they've gone through. They will save you a lot of pain in the long run, because they would have gone through those experiences themselves, because they think they know what's best. And they were children once themselves. So, you know, I look back now, when you're younger, you don't see adults as having lived as children before. You just see them as adults.
I know.
And that could have saved me a lot of pain. It could have saved me a hell of a lot of pain, honestly.
Wow. I can see it. Where you're expressing yourself, and so I guess that's the childhood part. Now let's move on to you, Roger, on your own. When you started from being a young adult to being the person that you are today, what has that journey been like?
Wow, it's been an exciting journey. But once again, going back to childhood, if I'd listened, then, you know, my journey wasn't a straightforward one. I didn't leave school with GCSEs and then go from GCSEs to college, to do A levels, and to university, which is the normal route which my family would have liked me to take. I decided when I was 16 to leave school as soon as I could get out. I decided to leave home as soon as I could get out, because I thought I knew what was best. And I decided to live an existence which, when I look back now, was just absolutely madness. There was no career path. There was just fun. Let's have girls. Let's go drinking. I want to be a man before time. And you know what? All that process, although I had my freedom, I was a father by the time I was 18. So I have a son. My son is 37 this year.
Wow.
And yeah, so I thought I knew what was best. I never had any education around sexual education. My grandparents never really spoke about anything like that. So, I had to find out the hard way myself. And what feels like it's fun being out with girls and experimented ended up costing me my childhood, because I'm all of a sudden now a father and trying to manage that. So that robbed me of a lot of development. And that didn't last very long, because I didn't know how to be a young man, let alone being a father. So all of a sudden that relationship, well, you can imagine it was complete chaos. You got two kids raising a kid, thinking that they're this ideal nuclear family, where really they didn't even know how to manage their own emotions. So that, you can imagine the outcome of that wasn't very good. We split up after 2 years, and the knock-on effect of that, then you're left with a child who, absent father, because you and the mother don't get on. The mother's immaturity. She's talking to the child and telling him about the father being bad and all that kind of stuff. So the outcome of that is not going to be good. You have a child who doesn't know you, or has a view of you because the mother, a woman, scorn, and because you're still young, you're still playing the field, being the boy, being the man, not taking into account that you've got a child. You're still going out mixing with other women. Of course she's going to be upset. Of course she's going to be, angry towards you. So once again, the whole existence is a very, very shallow, selfish life. You're not taking anybody else's feelings into consideration. You're just being selfish and thinking about you. So, but when you're blind, and you can't see it until later on, then later on sometimes can be too late.
Wow. And I guess there's another shift in what you've just said, being a parent at a young age, the impact it has. And I think sometimes we underestimate, when the adults grow up and they're still trying to heal from the fact that they were robbed a certain stage of their life.
Yeah.
They go through some sort of crisis. What shift can we say? How do we, for the young parents or the young people that are in those kind of situations, how do we empower them? How do we inspire them? How do we shift the narrative in that situation?
I think for me, when I look back, instead of saying, well, she got pregnant and she should have known, and she, well, it takes two of you to tango. So the bottom line is you have to be accountable. Okay. Right. From the minute, it was great at the time and all the fun and the feelings and all the rest of it. But if the end product is having a child, at that point, you need to be accountable. You need to stand up as a man and say, right, okay. Because whatever the situation is, this child, your sperm donation has created this child, and that child is you. It's your DNA, and you have to be in a position to now stand up on your own 2 feet. And if you're not getting on with the mother, then you have to make the decision and the sacrifices to support your child, no matter what. No matter what the mother thinks of you or says about you, you have to support that child. And that's when you start to become a man, because you start to understand responsibility. You start to understand selflessness. You start to realize that you were party to the creation of God's child. Okay. And therefore you need to participate in the upbringing, not just financially, but in your time as well. Because the money is great, but the time that you spend nurturing, cultivating, developing this human being so they can be a rounded person. Because the problem is, I can talk about it now because I didn't have that. You know,
Yeah.
my grandfather was there. He did his best. Very old traditional. My stepfather, he was caught in two worlds because he's got me as a stepson, but he's got his own children. So that full impact of being a full father, I never experienced it. It's not until it happens to yourself and you make your own mistakes, then you realize actually, you know, through maturity, through awareness, through your own spiritual alignment of compassion and empathy and understanding and tolerance and perseverance and humility and all of this, what your virtues you start to cultivate, that's when you can start to give that and pass that on to another human being. And you know, we all will make mistakes. None of us are born as parents, but when I look back, there's nothing that hurts me more as a man to know that I wasn't there for my child, you know, as a father, you know, to help develop that child. And that relationship, unfortunately, is not a good relationship. You know, he has been brought up in a place where he feels angry, the trauma of not being there, the trauma of the very same things that I experienced, feeling different because I wasn't there. He then went through the same experience of feeling different. You know, the parents' evenings where both parents are there, and then he's there only with his mother, and then the friends are asking, where's your father, and having to be in this place, you know. So, and the knock-on effect of that then is the impact on the women who have to be
Yeah.
mother and father to the child.
Mm.
And then the father feels later on he can just come into the life and all of a sudden make up and play catch up. Well, like I said, sometimes it's too late because the child has been conditioned by the mother. So you reap what you sow.
Yeah. That's powerful. You reap what you sow. And there's an element there of repetition. There is a pattern of, hopefully, you know, like you said, you lacked the you know, that fatherly figure, full on fatherly figure, and then you went and repeated the same thing, and hopefully. So how do we break those patterns? Do you know what I mean? How do we break those patterns? Because there's a high rate of those, you know, single parents, high rate, you know, fathers not being there, high rate. How do we break those patterns, those habits?
Well, you know, the man being accountable is one thing, but the woman also needs to be accountable. This is a joint effort. So, you know, a woman who's never had any love before, all of a sudden, guy comes along, promises the world, makes her feel great, makes her feel special. You know, this period of infatuation, the heartbeat is racing and can't wait to see each other and you just want to spend so much time together. You have to be able to differentiate what is love and what is infatuation. And unfortunately, the unfortunate problem is the traditional way of two people meeting. They would meet, they would go for walks, they would talk, they would communicate, but we've got a big problem now. You know, people just wanted to do that part. It's a quick fix situation in society. And rather than go through the process, everybody wants to get from point A to point B, rocket speed. And all of a sudden now you're developing a relationship, a sexual, intimate relationship based on lust. And when it's based on lust, you know, once you get to a point of infatuation disappearing, you're then left with self. And self is a real difficult place because if you don't even know yourself and the person you're with doesn't know his self, but you're both in a world of theatre because everybody's being the best version of themselves, all of a sudden, it's great while it's like that. It's amazing. It's the most beautifulest feeling. You think, this is love. It's great. You know what? I want to spend the rest of my life with this person. And then when the infatuation starts to die down, because it does, average shelf lives around 12 weeks, 3 months, then the cracks start to appear. Because one of the things when you're an actor, you have to be able to be consistent. And if you're going to tell lies, you also have to be consistent. And the one thing that women have is a memory like a elephant. And because I'm talking about myself now, so my personal experience is You know, I go in there, I drop all the lyrics, I feel great, you know, I'm spending, I'm treating, I'm doing all of this. But what happens is lust, which is dangerous. It's part of the ego. You start to get bored, not bored. All of a sudden, your eye starts to roam and you start to look at something else, which is a bit more shiny, a bit more different, a bit more appealing, you know, because all of a sudden, the void that you filled, which you thought was happiness, starts to fizzle out and you're after the next chase. It's almost like addiction. You know, you start to think in terms of, right, I've had my fix, but I want my next one now. And the problem we've got here is, you know, there's too many women, too many temptation. And the word temptation is where the difficulty comes in, because if your arrested development in your personality doesn't allow you to know the difference of going, actually, I need to be loyal. You know, this woman has given me love. She's opened herself. She's made herself vulnerable. She's given me her body. And all of a sudden now I'm going to just kind of break that loyalty. Then you have to understand that the outcome of that is that you're going to leave somebody very hurt and distraught and traumatized. And the problem with that then is that when this woman does meet the right person, then she's never going to trust that person. Because there's a big thing in our community where a lot of black men would rather be with white women because they say black women look miserable. They look like they're so unapproachable. They're so, and they don't realize that these women who have been brought up in such a way about giving and loving and caring, they've given themselves. They've been quite, naive to a point where they believe that this person is the perfect guy because he's dropped all the lyrics, and all of a sudden, then when they're traumatized because they were so heartbroken, especially those left with children, how on earth are they supposed to trust the next person? So they then become this strong, resilient, independent, no nonsense, it ain't going to happen to me again kind of person. I don't know if this resonates with you, Musa, but you know, this is the reality.
It's the reality.
It's the reality.
That's what we do here. Real things, real talk, unfiltered. Yeah. That's what we do. Yeah.
So we have to take responsibility, but women have to also take responsibility for themselves. And it doesn't mean, you know, that you don't, you know, you have to have this real cold kind of non-loving way of doing things. I think patience is what comes to mind. If somebody wants you that much, okay, and they genuinely want you, then the universe will provide that person. You don't have to sit there feeling inadequate or insecure or not forced, but also almost obligated to give your body to a man because you feel that he may want to go somewhere else. If you're thinking like that and your intuition is telling you that, then you need to listen to that God-given intuition because it's there for a reason. It means that this person isn't the right person for you. Because if they are, they'll wait, they'll be patient, they'll want to cultivate and develop and nurture like a plant, you know, from a seed, and watch the relationship grow. You take the risk if you're going to give yourself openly to a man, because you know what, as soon as you do that, then that's when you're at risk and you're very vulnerable. And I know women and men, they want love, they want it so badly and they believe in it, but the consequences of that, if it goes wrong, is detrimental because it will then pave your journey and possibly prevent you from meeting somebody who's sincere, who's got integrity, who's got value, who wants to be with you, but you're just too scared. I've been hurt, I can't do this again. As much as I love you, I'm going to concentrate on my career. I'm going to concentrate on my fitness. I'm going to concentrate on how I look for my children because I have to be strong. I can't open myself because if I do that, then there's a big possibility that I could end up being affected again, and I'm not going to let that happen. So all of a sudden we've got a lot of people who are so scared. They put this mask on that they're strong and all the rest of it, but deep down they want to be loved. Of course you want to be loved. You want to have a relationship with somebody who shares everything with you. But we've become a nation of fear. We're too scared to share ourselves, especially if we've been hurt before. You know, so I think women in general, black or white, want to be loved.
Definitely.
And I think, you know, role models are really, really important. My role model, growing up, looking at black men, If a black man had a variety of different women going on at the same time, then he was a don. He was a don. This,
Yeah, he
when I
was
look back
hyped
at,
for that.
yeah, of
Pat on
course,
the back.
I look at that now and it disgusts me.
Mm.
There's nothing special about running around having lots of baby mothers and having kids all over the place. That for me is not conducive to how society is, because what we're doing then is we're creating a factory of illegitimate children who really haven't got any opportunity or hope within their futures unless the mothers are so strong that they go, right, I'm going to take on the mantle for both. What we need are both women and men to step up and say,
Right.
right, okay, you like me, I like you. Okay, we have a plan. I was always saying, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. You need to have a plan, because two people getting together, unprotected, having sex, law and average, you will have a child. Then that becomes a responsibility. But if you both think in terms of, okay, how do we build this relationship so it's solid? Let's look at education. Let's go, and even if we're not very intelligent or we feel we're not intelligent, let's find a profession or a trade or something that we have an interest in, and go away and develop that. And let's go away and develop our skills, and at the same time start to get a better understanding of ourselves. So we're talking now about personal development. If you didn't have a father, read, look at role models that are successful, who have got ambition, who have got drive, who have got determination, who have got commitment, and read their books, their autobiographies on how they started and how did they get to point. And education is key. I'm not talking about reading stuff that has no interest to you. I'm talking about finding a role model, who you have kind of a level of positivity about. I'm not talking about some artist who plays music, who sings about derogative things and women and forget that nonsense. Okay, I'm talking about stuff that is going to cleanse your soul. That's going to create the mind shift into positivity, which is going to make you think on a different level, frequency, a higher frequency, which is going to open doors. Because what happens is, the more you practice being selfless, the more you start to practice and cultivate spiritual values and being more compassionate and having empathy and love in your heart. It's like a ripple effect, Matsu. It starts to bring in people. People kind of come to you because they feel you. They feel you.
Yes.
Okay. And it's a different kind of energy. And you know what? The universe brings these people to you. They look at you and think, wow, I like this guy. There's something about him. And, it's a real sad shame that I didn't learn this when I was younger. I had to go through so many different doors before I could get to a place of salvation and all of this that I'm talking about, So if I can help young people, and that's where I made my decision, over 17 years ago, that now that I've discovered this frequency, then I made it my life's work to be able to help young people. And this is what's brought me to here, to now.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's absolutely amazing. Because I know you recognize nationally, and I know even David Cameron, everywhere you were talked about as a role model, especially for the young people to end gang crime and drug addiction. Now, we are running a serious campaign on drug addiction. We started in Zimbabwe, but we're coming over to do it in the UK as well. And where the state where we are in is we have a crisis in Zimbabwe for drug misuse. And I think as society, I don't know whether as adults people have adequate knowledge around what drug misuse does, what addiction does, the impact. Is there any sort of shift you could give us around addiction and, the young people as well, how we can inspire or empower them to come out of that situation?
Yeah, as I was saying, I mean, my first experience of addiction, or should I say mind-altering substance, was alcohol. You know, when we was kids, you know, parents used to at Christmas give you a little drink, and they didn't see anything wrong with that. They used to think, oh, you know, give them a sherry or a wine or something. And I remember feeling giddy. And this is when I was like, you know, 13, 14, maybe younger, even 11, 12. But nothing was seen at that time as dangerous. But the feeling, when I look back, of feeling nice, feeling warm, feeling like there was escapism, you know. I wouldn't say I put it in that context when I was younger. It just felt strange. I felt different. But as the years went by and I started to get to a place of like 15, 16, that feeling of escapism when you're a teenager, because life's pressures, society, your parents are on your case all the time, you know, to feel different is a nice feeling, you know. And if you're not a confident person either, you know, it makes you feel a bit more outrageous. You do silly things. You don't think about stuff. Gives you confidence to talk to girls. You know, have a little bit of weed. You know, you're with your friends, laughing. I mean, I used to laugh so much when I used to smoke cannabis. I used to have belly laughter. I was in tears, and then I'd go home and eat the cupboard out. You know, I remember those early days because it was fun. You know, it was fun, but then it changed. And the problem with that feeling is I started off very, very early, as I say, with alcohol. By the time I was 16, 17, I was smoking resin, cannabis resin. I glue sniffed, which was a big thing in England, sniffing solvents. By the time I was 19, you know, I'd had my child, but really didn't do anything then. I was busy trying to be a mature adult going to work. But by the time I got to like 20, 21, in a world of being a young man, it started to progress. And then I was on amphetamine, which was like, they call it speed. It keeps you awake. And in England at the time, we had this new generation of ecstasy. Ecstasy just arrived in England. And it was like, wow, everybody felt so loved up. And it was about escapism. It was about feeling different. And I actually enjoyed that. I went through the process of growing my addiction, but wasn't aware of it. So I lived in Vienna, in Austria, in 1988, lived there for several years. I was very fortunate because I was always a guy that trained, and I loved bodybuilding to the point that I'd compete. I'm quite an interesting person, really. I mean, I speak fluent German, I ski, I love classical music. I'm not your traditional type of person that you would say is a drug addict. You know, I've got lots of friends who are in business. They were in business at the time and they were very successful. The difference with them is that they could take drugs and stop. With me, I wanted to be the last man dancing. So, you know, in my time in Vienna, I was very fortunate because I did a lot of security work. So in my time, I worked with people like Bobby Womack and Womack, Tina Turner. I've met Michael Jackson. Tupac was a part of Digital Underground. Gloria Gaynor, David Hasselhoff. I mean, the list goes on with people that I did security for while I was there. I had an amazing time. But what I realized was that caricature, that ego, that person really was just a very vulnerable, insecure person trying to fit in, always trying to fit in, always trying to conform, but always feeling quite different. And why I felt different is because my self-esteem was so low. It's funny because the kids that I work with or did do, they have this persona where they think they're bad and they're swagger and all this kind of stuff. And I find it quite funny. I mean, later on in years, worked in prisons and institutes for young people, young offenders. And it's kind of crazy because when you get to see what they're really like on their own, they're not like that. You know, this is all bravado. And I think that's what it was for me. It was bravado, but feeling different. And as I said, my whole journey of going through that process of addiction, it cost me everything because my ego, my arrogance, that will never happen to me. I'm better than. All of a sudden now I'm in rehab, spending 6 months like a big baby while these therapists that are pulling me to pieces to break down my ego, to teach me to find humility. It's almost like a complete restoration of my character. The drugs and the alcohol, Mutsa, is just the symptom. That's the symptom. What we're talking about here is your character.
Right.
The character. Take away the drugs and the alcohol. Who are you? People say, "Oh, addiction." Well, I'm not addicted. I have it now and again. Well, now and again, when you find that you can't stop doing something repeatedly, right?
You're
Or keep
addicted.
going back to it. That is an addiction. But what happens in society, people minimize it. So for anyone who's listening, if you think smoking a bit of weed now and again in the evening is not an addiction, you're kidding yourself. You're living in denial. The reality of that is when you cannot stop doing something. For any viewers, try it. If you smoke weed, if you smoke cigarettes, if you eat chocolate, if you find that you're
The
addicted
alcohol as well.
alcohol, pornography, anything, shopping, spending time in the gym. If you can't do without that for long periods of time, then you've got an addictive nature. Something that is a compulsion where you feel that you've got to do it. If you don't do it, oh my God, if I don't have it, I don't have it. I'm not going to be able to get through the day. Try it. Give yourself 28 days of stopping doing something that you're used to doing habitually every day. And the reason I can talk about this is because I'm actually a qualified substance misuse practitioner. When I got clean, I decided I wanted to take on the world. I want to be a counselor. I want to help everybody. I found myself being self-righteous. I wanted to be a drug counselor. And I did. I spent 4 years. I got qualified. I did outreach work in some of the most darkest places in Nottingham, under the caves, looking for heroin users, St Anne's, Radford, Meadows, you name it, crack houses, crack dens. I went in there as an outreach worker to help people. I helped set up a project, which is a fantastic organisation. It's been running for the last 10 years, and it's culturally specific for Black and Asian people. Because what we realised was Black people in particular weren't accessing drug treatment because of the shame, because of the guilt, because of the lack of stigma, the cultural identity. When they go there, it's a white person, they feel like they're going to be judged. And I went through that process. I'd turn up at a treatment centre to come and get help as a Black man, and I'd say, I'm a ex-crack cocaine user. And they'd be like, oh my God, wow. And they were mostly middle-class white people who just didn't know how to engage with me. The first thing they do is panic and then go and try and find a Black support worker. and thank God that they did, because as soon as you go Black, crack, wow, I went to jail. I've spent time in prison. Wow. I was up for looking at 10 years for conspiracy to supply Class A drugs in Nottingham, many years ago. I've been locked up for arson, trying to burn down the house with somebody hopefully not in it, but unfortunately they were. I've done some crazy stuff. I worked as a security doorman in England for 27 years. I did security in some of the darkest places. Manchester, when Manchester was called Gunchester back in the 80s, 90s, where people were getting killed left, right and centre over drugs. I've done all the dark side, the organised crime, being involved in all of that. Okay. And one day it brought me to a place called rock bottom. And it's not until you hit that place through your ego, okay, through your arrogance, through your grandmother saying, boy, if you can't hear, you must feel. When I talk about feeling, and you're in that dark place, for some people, they get excited. Wow, you're selling drugs and you're living the flash life and fast cars and all the rest of it. That's just part and parcel of the journey. But no one ever talks to you about the place when you're in a room on your own, drawn windows, paranoid, full of psychosis, contemplating suicide, try to commit suicide. That no one talks about that, because as the years progress, it's great when you're younger, but when you keep practicing something, be careful, because the more you practice something, the better you get at it. And all of a sudden, you don't realize that whatever this is, don't get me wrong, I sat there going, you know what, I used to look down at other drug addicts and people who were big men who were selling drugs, who took drugs and started to lose themselves. And I would be the guy saying, you know what, that will never happen to me. Take heed. Take heed. You think it won't happen to you? What makes you so special? Drug addiction doesn't care what your status is, what your mindset is, who you think you are. There's only going to be one thing that's going to happen, and it will rob you. Whether you're just a gentle weed smoker, I mean, the odd spliff now and again, it's robbing you. All your friends and family around you who are really getting up, going to work, studying, you're doing something that's slowing you down. It's slowing your life down. It's slowing your brain, your mind, everything, while all your friends are progressing. And what happens is there's a transitional period because you keep doing that. All of a sudden now your friends who are working, they've been to college, they've got themselves a nice little car, they've got a nice little girl, and you're still there smoking weed, thinking about how you're going to rule the world in your fantasy nonsense of a world. It's rubbish, absolute nonsense. Okay, I've worked in the field of drug and substance misuse and been there and had the experience and got the t-shirts, you know, to tell you that you're wasting your life. Okay, and if you think, well, I don't smoke, I'm not stupid, I won't take crack. Well, whatever else you're doing, whether it's alcohol, which people for some reason, as I said earlier, think is okay, alcohol is poison. Go and research and understand how they make alcohol and what chemicals are in that. You know, anything you put in your body that makes your mind alter, makes your blood pressure rise, okay, and makes you have impaired vision, right? More domestic violence, more people are killed, more so than anybody taking crack cocaine and heroin and any other drug combined together. Alcohol is the #1 killer, okay? Wow. So don't kid yourself.
Domestic violence and all.
Massively. Domestic violence, rape, you know, listen, do your research. You know, yes, we all like to feel a bit giddy and merry. You know what? If I feel like that, you know what? If I want to feel like that, I drink chamomile tea. That's where I am.
Because I think whenever you hear somebody talking about having a drink or, you know, the drugs on if you do most conversations, people will be like, it relaxes me. You know, I take this because it helps me. It relaxes me. Now, how do you tell a person that says, I need a drink for me to go to sleep, or because it helps me go to sleep? How do you tell that person to say this is not good for you when they're saying they're benefiting from that? How do you?
There is no, Mutsa, there's no benefits. Okay, I would first of all have to question myself and say, why do I need to put something in my body to help me to go to sleep? Right? There's so many different natural things you can do to promote sleep. Okay, go and exercise, read a book, you know, eat something nice, go and have a nice hot bath with some candles, put some nice music on, you know, make love to your woman. Okay, but if you feel you need to have something that's going to enhance you, okay, in order to go to sleep, or in order to make you feel that you can fit into an environment, then you need to have a look at yourself. Okay, there's some work that you need to do, that you are reliant on something chemical to make you feel brand new. And you know, this is not something out of a textbook. I'm talking about lived experience. I used to have a spliff, and it makes me feel brand new. I feel, yes, really. It doesn't do that. What it does, it starts to affect your receptors in your brain, okay? And the more you do it, you'll end up giving yourself, from the THC levels, brain damage. My short-term memory and long-term memory is damaged because I wanted to feel brand new. You know, sitting around with my friends, smoking the highest grade, you know, having loads of it constantly, and mash up. You mash up. Listen to your narrative. You're mash up, right? Really? Look, I'm not here to try and teach anybody what to do with their lives, okay? All I know is that I've probably smoked, in terms of crack cocaine, the equivalent of a couple of Porsche 911s, okay? Wasted money. You know, the amount of hours mash up, I've lost hours where I could probably be a qualified doctor with a PhD, especially the money that I've invested. I could have probably bought myself 5 PhDs, a couple of mansions, and be retired by now. But that didn't happen, okay? I've wasted so much time, so much life, so much energy, so much damaging people. And that's the other part about this, right? Addiction doesn't just rob you, it robs other people of their peace of mind. Even if it's down to your parents wondering, oh my God, he's smoking weed. You know what? What's he going to do for a career? How's he going to get a job? Yeah. I've brought this child into the world. And all of a sudden, here's the terrible thing. The parents start to blame themselves and think it's their fault, when really it's your fault. You had the choice, and you went and did that. And then you've got these innocent people who are now taking it on board that they're not good parents, and then questioning their skill set regarding raising the children. We have to take responsibility. Everything's about being accountable. And yes, I made my mistakes. And you know what? I'm trying my hardest to redeem myself. And if whatever I say today, the penny drops with somebody. And stop thinking in terms of drugs, right? Drugs and the alcohol is just one area, okay? There's many, the whole sex industry, right? Whether you're clicking on your phone, looking at porn constantly, and you need that to fill a void. Because what we're talking about is filling a void.
Right.
And the only way you can fill that void is by getting to a place of inviting and loving God into your life, okay? And what I mean by that is being in a place where you start to understand what spirituality is. Read. Try and get a better understanding. Not even try. I don't even like the word. Do get a better understanding of yourself. And I tell you what, the gifts will come in an abundance. Believe me. We're not talking about the external stuff. I'm talking about you as a person, how you will feel valued, your self-esteem, your self-confidence, your self-belief, all of that, which you can't buy. You can't purchase self-belief or self-value. You have to have that feeling. And the only way you can gain that feeling is by having specific goals and getting to a place of accomplishment. When you've read a book, you've accomplished. When you've eaten a nice meal, you've accomplished. When you've had a day off drugs, you've accomplished. When you're helping others, you've accomplished. When you're learning to start kind of improving your mind's shift, okay,
yeah,
everything changes. The ripple effect, the same ripple effect that you create when you're hurting yourself and hurting other people and sexing up women and lying and deceitful and dishonest, all that toxic stuff. When you start changing that and putting a spiritual value in its place, then believe me, things start to change. If you don't feel that if you're resentful, practice forgiveness. Resentment is just that almost a single killer. They say it's like drinking the poison and expecting someone else to die of it. The only person who's hurting is you. You're busy being judgmental and criticizing others. Look at your own stuff. Look at you. Stop looking at them. They're getting on with their lives. The bottom line is we're born on our own in this world, and then we leave on our own. And that legacy that you leave behind, you have to think to yourself, how do you want to be remembered? And if you've got children, how do you want them to remember you? But on the grand scheme of things, in terms of our longevity on this planet and how important we are with all the billions of people on this planet, it's really nice when you can do something significant, for others. And I tell you, I kid you not, the more selfless you are, the more you will learn to love yourself more. And it's that straightforward. Do the right things and the right things will happen. You do the wrong things, I kid you not, the wrong things will happen. So that's my philosophy. And I don't get it right. So I'm not here to be completely self-righteous and I know what's best. I'm talking about lived experience. Despite my youthful look, I'm actually 55 this year.
Wow.
I shouldn't even be here. I've had racist attacks. I've had a hammer put in my head. I've been stabbed. I've been shot at. Listen, my journey hasn't been an easy journey. And when I think in terms of where I've been to where I am now, collecting awards from the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister doesn't really bother me. What was exceptional about my award was the fact that, Barack Obama, the first black president, he endorsed the Points of Light Award to England. And when I think in terms that he had, an involvement in giving that award to the UK, I'm not bothered about David Cameron. I'm not at all. It's the fact that in my lifetime, a black president has endorsed an award that I've received. I'm never going to see that again in my lifetime. So I'm really, really grateful to God. When I couldn't carry myself because of my addiction, because I didn't know how to love myself anymore, I didn't have anything, dignity, I lost all my respect, everything had gone. People couldn't trust me anymore. Do you know how horrible that was to not be trusted? And now they want me to run for election, to be a politician. I've got my own TV production company, literally going to be on television. I can't believe the stuff that's happening. And the list of stuff goes on. I'm trusted with lots of other people's children. I don't, one of the sad knock-on effects is I've got 2 children that, because of my drug addiction, I'm not allowed to see because of my addiction. I have not seen them for 12 years. And in my journey, the most painful thing in my life is not being able to see my children. And every day, for years, I used to cry. I couldn't, because I loved them. But because of my addiction, it robbed me of that relationship. So my message to you, anybody out there who feels that they're okay, they're smoking a spliff, it's just a bit of fun, you're not going to stay at the age that you're at forever. You're going to grow, and there's things that you're going to want to do with your life. Don't get robbed. Don't let that happen to what happened to me happen to you. I'm not saying that the consequences are going to be as bad as that. I'm hardcore. So, whatever would happen to me would have to be hardcore for me to kind of get to a place of rock bottom. But you know what? Just don't do it. Find yourself a place where you can start to work on yourself, develop yourself. Anything is possible. You can achieve and be whatever you want to be in this world. I do blogs and I call them It's an Inside Job. And I talk about this stuff, where it doesn't matter because we're here today that we have to be there in the same place tomorrow. We can change. And the one thing about COVID is that it's taught us how fragile we are, that life is too short, how vulnerable we are. So embrace life. You get one time. I'm sick and tired of going to funerals where kids are killing each other, shooting each other, and then they're there, with a T-shirt with the kid's face on saying, rest in peace, and they're there with the alcohol and the spliff, pouring it on the grave. Listen, this is not no game. This is reality. Okay, once you're dead, unless you've got some kind of cultivated spirituality where you believe in life incarnation, which I guarantee you haven't, unless you were born to be some kind of guru, because that takes work to get to that place of that level of belief system. Once it's over, you're finished. It's gone. So while you're on this planet, on this earth, God's earth, embrace it. Be the best that you can be. Believe it, dream it, achieve it. It's there if you want it. Don't be like me. Don't lose all those years where you could. I'm getting emotional now because it really, really, I'm so passionate about wanting young people to succeed. And it's not just young people. If anyone's listening and I didn't have a business until, 6 months ago. And all of a sudden now, by rights, technically, I should be looking to have given up, but I haven't. I found my faith in God. I wake up and I put one foot in front of the other. And by doing that and keeping my faith and keeping my belief and being committed and being focused and being dedicated, right? Just keep pushing and don't listen. Don't let your doubts affect your mind. Absolutely. Everybody has doubts. Everybody has doubts. Even the people who put on this face and they seem confident. All of us. We're all of us.
Yeah.
But when you pray to God and say, God, please take my will, take my life, guide me through this day, the magic happens. Don't leave until the miracle happens.
Yeah.
So
yeah, thank you so much for that, Roger. Honestly, I'm truly humbled that you've shared so much detail and, you taking accountability and you owning up, and also the sad reality of the addiction has robbed you of 2 beautiful kids, not seeing them in 12 years, but yet here you are, still resilient, running for elections, next MP, and that just shows you in life, because I want us to focus now on what you're doing and where you're going and what's happening, that vision and everything else, so that people get to see the reality, because, people are quick to judge somebody when they don't know half the journey, or when they see someone going through something, they have a certain perception. But you have lived it, you have gone through it, been to prison, shot it, hammered, addiction, rehab, everything. What haven't you not gone through? Childhood, being robbed of your childhood because you became a father at an early age. And today, please tell us who you are and where you are and the vision.
My vision, I suppose, in a nutshell, I'm a beacon of light, and I don't mind calling myself that because I can't think of anything other than what that represents. You know, it's like having a light that shines out to be able to give people hope. Somebody said to me, and I said, I can't take that title. He says, it's like you're a modern day prophet. And I thought, okay,
Yeah.
I'm not very good at compliments. I think the biggest journey for me is trying to shift from the past. Don't let your past define you, because if you do, it will hold you back. That has been the fight for me. And now I'm in a place where I don't care what you think about me. I've had to practice that mantra as an affirmation on a regular basis. I don't care. And my brain saying, well, you do care, you know, because you're human. And my sponsor, who I have, tells me that, you know, it's all right for people to judge you, but until they've walked a mile in your shoes, it's just an opinion.
Yeah.
And you can't let people's opinions affect you. So my journey is to be selfless. I want to help as many people, you know, and I think the biggest drive for me is with Black Lives Matter. I'm not a supporter of Black Lives Matter in that kind of sense as an organization. I'm a big fan of Black Lives Matter. And for me, that means in terms of our oppression and our suppression, we need to change that. We need to change the narrative. The whole purpose, you know, in 4 weeks' time is going to be the day when I stood at Nottingham on the Forest Recreation and spoke as one of the keynote speakers at the Black Lives Matter demonstration. That was the catalyst for me, because when I looked across, just under 5,000 people were there, and that was no easy task for me. People say, oh yeah, but you're a natural talker. My anxiety levels kicked in. I was told there was going to be 750, and when I got there, it ended up being just under 5,000. You know, my anxiety, which I spoke to you before, was at its worst. Everybody that had spoken on that day had said everything that I thought I was going to say, because I got there at 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
And then they said, you're going to be on at 1:30 and you've got half an hour. I'm like, what? So from finding out, you know, being told 750 people were turning up and then having to wait to the very end to speak, it was almost like a very big issue for me. And I remember going around the back of the pavilion and saying, God, you know, whatever I say, please guide me away from ego and let it come from my heart. And that was it, really. And I think that's been the drive ever since now regarding equality, diversity and inclusion of Black people being in positions of power, combating and sitting in meetings regular with white people, telling them that they need to relinquish their white power and let Black people, you know, develop their own strategies, you know, from our lived experience, as opposed to they want us to collate the information for them so they can deliver it. I have a problem with that. You know, we collate it amongst ourselves and we deliver it to our people in order to empower ourselves and empower our people, so we can then be in a position of power to change the narrative, to change the perspective of our existence. You know, historically for years, we've allowed white people to systematically be the ones that make us feel that we are in a place that we have to be second best. Well, that's not the case. I'm here to tell you that we are first best in our own communities. We don't need to rely on them. We need to create our own economy. We need to educate our own children about the lineage or the lineage of Black history, as opposed to looking at Black oppressive images of Black people in shackles with whale marks on their backs, you know, being on the Windrush ship with our Sunday best clothes on. Let's talk about the inventors. Let's talk about the architects, the designers, the engineers who created the pyramids. And let's go back to the Moors and let's depict history in the right way, as opposed to the whitewashed version of how English people, white Europeans have made us black people look second best. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about that.
I can see that, and
so
that's
Real Talk,
okay.
Yeah, Real Talk TV is exactly what it says on the tin. We're here to create and drive equality amongst black people and educate our black children and black adults who know nothing about our real history, and make sure that the disproportionate figures that are in universities who are not claiming their rights to do the sciences and become doctors, and leaving it to the Asian people who are the ones who are the pharmacists and the, we need to be in those places as well. We need to be in places of power, of government, in the police, and make sure those disproportionate figures have a good balance. And hence why Real Talk TV was set up to drive that forward, especially in the world of media and production. Sir Lenny Henry and Professor Marcus Ryder have written a book called Access All Areas, and they talk about the disproportionate figures of black people in media, which is a tiny, minuscule figure of only 14%. And that's through the newsrooms and also journalism. Black people need to go and do journalism so we can then share our experience, life experience, and then the narrative is correct, because where we get our information from is the media. And if those middle-class white people who are the journalists who are delivering that, then the information is incorrect. I'm not saying it's totally incorrect, but it hasn't got the essence of a black experience, lived experience, delivering that narrative in order for it to go into the communities that we live in. So there's a much more better representation of who we are, because we're a special, powerful force. We lost 450 years of our history, and we are very quick at getting up to speed. Just look around what's happening.
Definitely.
But the opportunities need to be created, and we need to open the doors, and the systemic conscious bias and all that stuff needs to be attacked. And those uncomfortable discussions that I'm more than happy to have, because I'm not affiliated to anybody, okay, I'm happy to challenge that. And the organisations that are supporting me, the Nottingham Playhouse, the Prince's Trust, the Nottingham University, the Nottingham Trent University, the Nottingham College, I mean, the list goes on of organisations who know me, who have heard me speak in such a manner, who have said, Roger, we've got your back. They've paid me money and sponsored me. And I've said, look, that's fine, but if you're a tick box outfit trying to get some publicity, you're with the wrong guy. No, we want to work with you. So yeah, this is what we're about, and it's great to have you as part of the team as well, so while we're on air, as part of Real Talk TV as well.
I'm humbled to be a part of such a vision, Black television. That's we need more of that, and that's where the empowerment. Now, I don't know what your perception is as a community. Do you think we are on that road? Do we need more work? Are we far from it, or we're done, or we're good? With regards to that collaborative approach of us coming together, empowering one another, uplifting each other, having each other's back, and becoming a force. Because you're a movement as a person. Energy says you're a movement as a person, but when you combine with somebody else, you become a force.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think we are? And if there are gaps, what are the gaps?
Okay, if I can be brutally frank.
Yeah. Yes, please.
We're at the very beginning. Until us as black people can cognitively mind shift, okay, to a place where we start to trust each other, where we might not like each other, but we can sit around the table and be able to develop our own economy, create strategies to improve our community. But the problem we've got, and this goes back to slavery, back to colonialism, is that we want to be our own boss. We don't want to, because of years of suppression, we don't want to take orders. We don't want to be in a place where we share our goals. We want to be seen as achieved on our own. We want to be insular. And that's not our fault. We've been conditioned that way for years. It means what we need to do is re-engineer our brains. Okay, the re-engineering of the brains. And you talk about the mind shift. And tell me,
an MP, which year?
Yeah, potentially. So I'm right. So Lord Vernon Coker, who was a good friend of mine. He was the MP for Labour. He's now a peer for the House of Lords. I think after the Black Lives Matters demonstration, it was put to me, why don't you look at running to be a councillor? So I thought, well, do I really want to do that? And I looked at it, I thought, yeah. Then the idea was put to me, just bypass being a councillor. Labour's in so much disarray at the moment. Why don't you just go straight in at MP level? So that's what I'm toying with. I've got Alex Norris, who's also an MP for Labour, and Vernon as my mentors.
Yeah, I know Alex, yeah.
And then I've got my good friend, Veronica Pickering, Deputy Lord Lieutenant, who's a Kenyan female. She's gone through so much, and she said, look, but what's more important is the community have thought it's a good idea.
Yes.
It's great having all these people with accolades, but the people of the community. So if I can represent them and they think I'm worthy because they say that I'm authentic, then yeah, I'll give it my best shot. Law and averages, I probably won't succeed, but because there's powers out there that would want other people to go for it. But you know what? I'm a firm believer in destiny, and if it's meant to happen, Mutsa, it will happen. Yeah?
It will happen. Well, you've got my vote. I'm right behind you.
I
So,
fear nobody. The only person I fear is God.
Amen. And that's how it should be. And this has been so inspirational, because you've talked, it was real talk. We had some real talk here, some real honest talk, and how you've been an open book, in a lot of things. Absolutely love it, because hopefully this resonates to somebody today, and this resonates to us as a community, that we need that Black economy. You know what I mean? And how, in your opinion, how are we going to be able to generate this?
I think we need to come together as communities, and we need to have meetings. Now we've got technology. One of the things I want to do with Real Talk TV, which I'm looking to develop, is have webinar where we have specific hard-hitting conversations, and we bring in people who we'll invite them via Eventbrite to participate. We'll bring in guest speakers nationally, internationally, who can share their experiences. And by having those conferences, we develop a stronger network where we then can start to look at good practice. So places where this is all happening already, all we have to do is emulate what they're doing and build a community. We're too isolated, we're too fragmented, and we need to come together. That's the bottom line, and have those real, frank conversations. I'm not interested in problems. I can hear that for a while. It's got to be about solution. There's only one solution. It's a spiritual remedy.
Right.
Amen. That's the only solution. We can sit and we can write and we can draw and we can talk, but the longest journey is from the brain to the heart. And when you come from your heart, all the goodness is there. The kindness, the compassion, the empathy, the willing to change. All of that is there. The tolerance, the perseverance, that faith is all in the heart. When it comes from the mind, it's just toxic. It's disbelief, distrust, devalue. You want to conquer, you want to ego, all that stuff, and that's where the separation needs to take place. Until we get to that place of mindful shift, then nothing will change. We'll always be in the same place. And that takes work, because it means you've got to get up every day. You've got to give thanks, gratitude. Without gratitude, forget living. You might as well be a table or a door or just a dense object. But when you've got gratitude in your soul, that's what drives you. You wake up and you think, you know what am I moaning about? I've got my health. I've got my needs are met. I've got food in my belly. But when you start looking outside of that, the external things, I haven't got this, I haven't got that, it'll bring you down. It'll bring you down. So it's a spiritual remedy.
I love that. That's what a way to end the show. Like, honestly, I'm going to ask you a few more questions around spiritualism, and then I'll let you go, because I bet you're tired.
No, I'm a guest speaker in about an hour, so I've got to get. What
Okay.
time is it? I should have been. I've got to be there for 4 o'clock.
20 to 4, and I know you've got the
Oh my
big
word!
webinar.
I've got to go. You've got to be very quick.
Just a few more, just hints on spiritualism. What is it? What is it?
Spirituality, in a nutshell, and I will finish on this. Spirituality, and this is what was explained to me by my sponsor, is treating people how you want to be treated yourself. That's it.
That's it. Grand finale.